Welcome to a special edition of the Darden Admissions Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. So, on this episode of the podcast, we return to our ongoing Faculty Spotlight series, a series we call Office Hours, with a conversation with Sasa Zorc. Sasa is a faculty member in the Data Analytics and Decision Sciences area here at the Darden School of Business, and he and I recently connected to talk more about his background, his research interests, the classes he teaches at Darden, and so much more. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. And as always, if this conversation is helpful for you, please like this episode and subscribe so you never miss an update. And remember, you can always check the episode description for links to Darden blogs, social channels, and more. And now, without further ado, here's my interview with Sasa Zorc. Sasa, thank you so much for being here. It's great to see you.
Yeah, thank you, Brett, and thank you for the very nice introduction.
All right. Well, before we get too far along, tell us a little bit more about you and your background.
Well, my background is a very bumpy one. So, I was always like a hardcore nerd into mathematics and games. And I started out studying mathematics in undergrad. And somewhere during that period of time, I got into poker. And then I was actually playing poker professionally for a few years. Then I didn't feel very motivated to graduate at all because that was going too well. But then at one point in time, it came to my mind that maybe this is not the best long-term plan. And then I graduated from math. I tried seeing what kind of job can I get where I can use my skills and where they're also willing to pay me something. And then I thought about going into investment banking. But then I graduated just in the middle of the crisis. So that didn't work out. I got a job in consulting. Then I went to do an MBA. And then I discovered I really like business schools. And I wanted to come back to a business school. So then I did a PhD and decided to try to stay permanently in a business school as a faculty member. And so far, that has been going pretty well. But it has not been a straight path.
Well, I appreciate the twists and turns. I do have to ask you, how does one get into playing professional poker? How did that happen?
Well, for me, it's kind of, it may sound weird, but it's actually a common path. So I was playing this game called Magic the Gathering, and it's kind of a very nerdy game with dragons and wizards and so on. And I was doing pretty well in that one. So I would travel over the world to play in different tournaments. And these tournaments would even have cash prizes. They were not very high, but they would kind of enable you to go around and play this game. And one of the players from that game, David Williams, he placed second in the World Series of Poker main event and won millions from that. And then a lot of people in that community got the idea, okay, maybe we should try poker out. And it turns out that there's actually a lot of transferable skills. So now when you look at like the top 10 players, top 10 winners of all time in poker tournaments, I think like 5 out of the 10 came from playing Magic.
I did not know that. I've already learned something new today. So amazing. You mentioned that you had always been interested in mathematics and games. Yeah. Certainly, we're talking about game theory, et cetera, a little bit later. But why mathematics? What attracted you to that?
I don't know. So basically, I always found the puzzle solving aspect of mathematics really fascinating. And when I was in high school, I was doing really well at this stuff. I would go to math competitions, math Olympiad. And then when I wasn't sure what I wanted to major in college. And then I decided to major in math primarily because I thought it would be really easy and I wouldn't have to put in much work, which turned out to be horribly misguided and it was not easy at all. But I did like it. I still did find it fun. Yeah.
I will say, as someone who was an English major in college, the idea of math being easy, thinking that math was going to be easy is an interesting one. So you mentioned that you got into academia and pursued an MBA, and you found that you really liked being in a business school environment. Ultimately, how did you decide that you wanted to teach?
I don't know. It was a complicated process, right? Because initially, after my MBA, I was kind of I just want to be I spend more time in a business school. And I even thought, like, can I just go get a PhD so I get to spend more time in a business school? And then I got advice from existing faculty members, which were like, well, you know that PhD is not like a super MBA. It only makes sense to do a PhD if you would like to be a faculty member. And then I started playing around with the idea, like, okay, maybe like I would like to be a faculty member. Maybe that's not too bad. And I really liked the research people were doing in business schools. Because this problem-solving aspect from math, which I liked, and the hardcore quant methodology, people do that stuff in business schools. It's only that they turn into more applied questions rather than the more abstract questions studied in math departments. And I
All
liked
right.
that. That was very appealing for me.
Yeah. So you get into your PhD program. I mean, what did you ultimately end up focusing on while you were in your PhD program?
Yeah, I mean, I got into my PhD program and I kind of also didn't know exactly what topic I would focus on. And then I think I got a lot of guidance from my advisor there. And I ended up doing two things during my PhD. One of them is what's called search theory. So basically, from the mathematical standpoint, there's a mathematical model where you have a person taking a draw from a random distribution, seeing what they get, and deciding whether they want to pay certain cost to get more draws in hopes of maybe getting something better, or stopping and keeping what they found. And this is called the search model. And apparently, variations of this model are very applied. They're applied to all sorts of matching markets. So markets such as housing market, where you have to go and search for which house you like. You go through a process like this. When you interview for jobs, both sides of the market go through a process such as this. So I ended up doing a lot of work on matching markets, which are based on this model. And methodologically, it was mathematical modeling, which was very close to my heart.
All right. So how do you get to Darden? I mean, you work on PhD, publish. How do you ultimately land at Darden?
Oh, I think I got very lucky. This was maybe more than 2 years before I was supposed to graduate with a PhD. I was presenting at an academic conference, which was a very small, narrow conference from my field. And in attendance were like 5 Darden faculty members, including the current Darden Dean of Degree Programs. And there was this part of the program where there was like a focus on best PhD student papers. And I was presenting one of my papers there, and the Darden faculty really liked it. So despite me not even applying for a job, they invited me to give a talk at Darden. And after the talk at Darden, I got a job offer. So yeah, that was, I don't know, how do we describe that in short version? I got hunted down. But in retrospect, I'm super happy that I came here. And I think it would be very hard to move me now.
What was the paper you were presenting? Do you remember?
Yeah. So it was one of these papers on matching markets. It was actually about the role of outsourcing in matching markets, because oftentimes in matching markets you do not go through the search process yourselves. Like you get, for example, a realtor to assist you with the search process, and companies get a recruiter to help them with hiring. And it was focused on the role of these intermediaries. Under which condition are they actually useful for us, and under which conditions should we do the thing ourselves? And also, what is the structure of the optimal contract with these intermediaries? Because the common contracts we have actually provide a lot of adverse incentives. To give you an easy example, like typical contract with a realtor will, like the agents will get what, like 6% of the final purchase price as their fee. And if you have a relatively fixed budget, then your agent kind of just want you to get you to buy anything as soon as possible. They really don't have an incentive to get you the property which you like the most, and they actually don't have. They have adverse incentives to get you to lower the price, because if you get a lower price, the lower the fee they get. So they would actually prefer for you to pay more.
Interesting. All right. Well, we'll get into a little bit more about your research interests and some of the things that you've worked on recently. Get a little bit later in the conversation, but I want to talk about teaching at Darden. We actually got a question in the Q&A about this. What's your favorite thing about teaching at Darden, about being
What's
in
my
it?
favorite thing? So as many people likely know, Darden is focused on the case method. So teaching here is not lecturing. It's more of an interactive environment where I talk less than half the time. Like the other is students. So everything is student-led. And like there are several aspects of that I really like. Like for example, it's never boring. Every class is somewhat different, dependent on what students like to do. I also find our student body to be an incredibly nice one. Like I think our emphasis on learning is actually stronger than many peer institutions, which also attracts students who would like to learn, and which leads to really positive student attitudes as well.
Well, you've taught decision analysis in the core and the full-time MBA program, and as I mentioned, in the executive MBA program. I want to ask a question before we get into the subject of what these courses are about, DA1 and DA2, as they're known here at Darden. What is it like to teach a more quantitative course, so decision analysis, right? Everybody's thinking about math and Excel and all this kind of stuff when they think about this course. What's it like to teach one of these courses through the case method?
Yeah. So initially, I was super scared about it, because I was thinking, if you get a strategy case, then maybe many people can kind of come up with reasonable ideas about strategy case. But like if you're teaching math, then well, there's one right answer, like the other ones are wrong. That doesn't. I was a bit afraid that it wouldn't lend itself well to discussion. But I think I was wrong, because oftentimes, even though we end up pursuing some wrong ideas in class, I think it's an invaluable learning experience to figure out why the wrong ideas are wrong, and like what's going to be the result of pursuing these paths.
Yeah, to me that sort of like it's like the wrong answers or going off sort of on a tangent can be helpful. I think it's something that maybe people don't realize when they think about learning through the case method. I think people are really stuck in this binary of you got to be right. There's a right
Yeah.
answer. There's a wrong answer.
Right, but even though like in math there is this is right answer, this is wrong answer, like if you just give different tries yourself and explore and eventually arrive to the right answer, I think this is a lot better learning experience than just someone telling you, okay, this is the right answer, memorize it, which is what we do in a lot of education otherwise.
Yeah, so that experimentation, you're trying, you're testing your understanding by engaging in
Yeah.
the case discussion. Well, let's talk about decision analysis. So you've talked both DA1 and DA2 in all of our programs. This course is split into two parts. There's
Right.
part one and part two. So tell us about decision analysis one. What is that course all about?
Yeah, we actually renamed our department this year. So we renamed it from quantitative analysis. We renamed it to data analytics and decision sciences. So the first part of DA focuses on these decision sciences aspect, which is kind of how do we make decisions in light of risk and uncertainty? How do humans actually make them? And what are some common pitfalls and how to avoid those pitfalls? And this is kind of something which stays relevant throughout people's careers, because even in senior leadership, you kind of have to make decisions in light of risk and uncertainty, and you're still subject to human biases. The second part of the A is more focused on the data analytics parts. It talks about how do we extract insight from data. and how do we use that insight in decision making. And it includes stuff like econometrics, machine learning, yeah, that kind of stuff. So even though they're two parts of the same course, they are very different.
So maybe to make this fit a little bit more vivid for our attendees here today, can you give an example of like a case or something that you work on in Decision Analysis 1 that you think is fairly reflective of that course? I know there's many cases that get covered, but
yeah, so many, like one case I particularly like from the first part is the Merck case. And in the Merck case, it concerns they have several drugs from their initial testing, which seem like they are working, but they're early stage, so they still need to go through that whole approval funnel, which is very costly and very uncertain because there's always the chance that it doesn't go successfully through FDA approval. So what we do in the case, we get some estimates for market potential of the drugs and for also what is the chance that it will go successfully through the approval pipeline and how much that is going to cost. And we need to make a decision about which drugs we are going to invest in. And these decisions are particularly controversial because Merck has their philosophy of drugs are here to treat people. We should not optimize profit. We should optimize, healing people. But that, in the case, that ends up being very conflicted with the profit motive, because some of these drugs look to be very promising in the sense that they're working, but they're very niche in the sense that there is not many people who are suffering from that condition. So they're not very profitable. And resolving that tension is very interesting.
All right. Thanks for indulging the question about a case from DA1. What about DA2? Is there a case that jumps out from that course?
Like a case which I particularly like there is the alumni giving case. And that one, it gives you data from many different schools. And from their class sizes, student body, graduation rates, student profiles, a lot of different data. And the goal is to try to figure out what is driving donations to the university. And what can we change about the university to get better donations. And I'm not sure I would spoil the case, but one of the amazing things about the case, which I really like, is that it enables you to get to a realization that one thing is really driving donations, even though that is not even included in the data. And the way it works is you make a model, and then you look at for which schools is the model messing up the most. And then try to figure out, well, what's in common to those schools? What's this data point which we are missing? And virtually every class figures this out. At one point, it clicks, and they're like, okay, this is the most important thing, even though it's not in the data.
Super interesting. Now, I will say some of our attendees today are probably hearing models and all of this kind of thing, and may say, I have no experience with building a model. I haven't done anything like this. I mean, how do people get up to speed on these tools?
This is a very common this is a very common concern, and I think the whole school is built with this in mind. So we have a wide variety of different backgrounds. We have people who are literature majors or journalism majors who the last time they saw math was in high school. And this is maybe even more salient for our executive MBAs because they have been out of school for a longer time. For these people, the more mathematical stuff is going to be harder. But the whole support structure is here to enable learning in this environment. And this is also somewhere where our executive program differs a lot from the residential program. So in the residential program, a lot of our students are going to be building like Excel models, statistical models, which make certain forecasts. Like they're going to take their first jobs in McKinsey or Amazon or Goldman, and like building these kinds of models is exactly what they're going to be doing. So this is something where they can hit the ground running, and it's very valuable. It's not the same for executives. Executives are oftentimes in more senior stages of their careers. And if they are not quantitative specialists, they are not doing this kind of analysis themselves anymore. And because of this, the emphasis in the executive program is different. It's more about interacting with the data specialists. So understanding what the data specialists are able to do, what kind of questions can you ask them, how to interact with them, and how to interpret the output that they are giving. And in this sense, I found AI to be invaluable because now, like in the last generation of MBAs, I allowed full use of AI. So now when you wanted to run some statistical analysis, like you didn't need to do it from scratch. You could ask the AI to help you with this. And AI was actually very good at emulating the role of data analyst. Like you could talk to it like you would talk to a human, but also like a human, it would try to pass off some bad work, like lazy work, and you would really need to know how to ask the right sub questions in order to get it to do a good job. Uh, yeah.
I appreciate that perspective. It's one that we share with prospective executive MBA students quite often, is that the focus is really much more on a managerial perspective. You're not likely to be the specialist doing the work, but rather the person who needs to understand what the specialist is saying and the work that they're doing to be able to use that information to make a decision. For folks who are just learning about our programs, our full-time MBA students tend to be, on average, earlier career than our executive MBA students. Full-time MBA students are typically around 4 to 5 years into their career on average. Our executive MBA students are typically 11 to 12 years. So into their careers on average. And there's a question in the chat, just to make sure we're all on the same page, because I know some folks are still learning about Dart, still getting their heads around what the academic experience is like here. That's one of the goals with this conversation is, so Darden is what you might consider a case method school. Now, I will say it's not the only way that you learn here, but as you go through the core, you're really going to have case discussions to learn these things. Now, you may have also some experiential learning opportunities. You may have some more project type based courses as you go through, but cases are a big part of what you're going to do here at Darden. So that's the question for Sasha about cases that you read in some of these classes. Sasha, anything you would want to add to that? Because I know people, just trying to understand the academic experience here at Darden may be new to some of our folks.
Yeah, I mean, we already talked about two specific cases. Now, for the case method, I think at its core, it's the Socratic method. So the learning through interaction rather than through being told what to do. And I think it's kind of also more fun way to learn.
So I want to pick up on what you were just saying about AI, the executive MBA students using AI. So there's so many tools now to make sense of data, and it feels like things are constantly sort of evolving, moving very quickly. How do you bring current industry practices, latest technology into the classroom? How hot topics, all this kind of stuff. How do you keep the curriculum current?
It's a challenge, and for AI, it's actually very convenient. So current AI is very user friendly. So anyone can just pick it up and talk to it as if it were a human. Now there's some learning curve involved, but you're able to start interacting with it right away. This is not true for other stuff. Like, for example, in data analytics, there are many machine learning methods currently being used. And those methods are not user-friendly at all. Like you can't do them in any user-friendly software. And like software where people typically implement it, like Python or R, is kind of hostile. So it's not made in a nice way. And the way we handle it in this stuff, which is not as accessible, but still very relevant to industry, that stuff lives primarily in electives. We have data science electives. So if you have the background and the willingness to tackle this kind of stuff, it's available for you and it's here. But we know that this is not going to be for everyone. Whereas the courses which everyone needs to take, we like a heavy emphasis is that all of the students, irrespective of their background, this needs to be doable for them and it needs to be useful for them. So that like the design is very different.
Yeah, thank you for that perspective, Sasha. So for folks who, again, who are just orienting to the academic experience, all students at Darden take a core curriculum. It primarily spans the first year of the full-time MBA program, the first 12 months of the executive MBA program. Our part-time MBA students, it's the first 18 months of the program, but it is the same core across all of Darden's MBA formats. And then the elective period begins in the program after that. And that's where you have an opportunity to take a deeper dive into a particular area, although there's no requirement that you concentrate or specialize in a particular area in the elective period. You can choose electives as they interest you, and many students will earn a concentration or a focus area for our professional degree students, but it's not a requirement. The one thing I'll share here, just a question that we got in the Q&A. Our executive MBA students, I mentioned that the emphasis is kind of a little, and Sasha also shared this as well, more on the managerial perspective, but it doesn't mean that you have to be a manager to do the executive MBA program. We have lots of students who are individual contributors looking to be managers or to move into more of a leadership or management role. The full distribution for the class profile is actually 5 to 25 plus years for our executive MBA program, with many of the students kind of being between 6 to 20 years of work experience. So you might imagine it's not all managers. It's certainly some individual contributors in that too. So yeah, I would say if you have questions about this, it's a good reason to reach out to our admissions committee, schedule a one-on-one conversation and talk a little bit more about it. All right, Sasha, I want to talk about electives now. That's okay, because we had a question early on that said, hey, do you study game theory? And interestingly enough, Sasha does have an elective, games, competition, and cooperation. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about this elective?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, I am a game theorist, and most of my research relies on game theory as the main tool. And I have this elective, games, competition, and cooperation, which is essentially a business-focused game theory elective. So what about it? There was an infamous saying by Reinhold Selten, the Nobel Prize winner in game theory, is that game theory is not about playing games; it's about proving theorems. I have really wanted to make my course an antithesis of that. So the course is in line with the Darden environment. It's very interactive. So every class, we either play some games or we play some simulations of typical of what happens in a business environment. So, for example, one of the sessions is about the negotiations between UK and European Union about Britain's exit from European Union. And students are paired and take the roles of EU and UK respectively in that negotiations. And they also need to make some economic decisions. So that's kind of a simulated environment. And the cumulative grade for the course is mostly composed of the performance in these games. So, yeah.
I know it's a very popular elective. When you talk to students as to why they're taking this elective, I'm curious. Do they tell you why they chose it?
Oh, I really didn't push it. So, like Darden courses, they are designed with the different kind of approach in mind. Like a lot of the courses we have are, what are the needs of particular career paths which our students may walk, and let's cater to those needs. Well, this course is not like that. This was like, I do research on certain things and I find them fascinating. So here they are. Hopefully, some people also share my interests. And thankfully, that did turn out to be the case because it is a very popular course and we have a long waiting list for it every year.
Is there another game that comes up or another sort of negotiation that's in the class that you think attendees might be interested in hearing about?
Yeah. So like there is also relatively abstract stuff. Like for example, games such as Prisoner's Dilemma, which is a foundational game theory game, which is kind of police catches two prisoners who did a crime together. They separate them into two different cells, and they ask them. They tell blame your partner if your part if you if you sign that your partner did everything, we're going to let you go, and they're going to jail. But if both of them sign this statement, it's going to be really bad for both. And we simulate this also in the environment. We play games. We play some forms of poker in the classroom. We also do stuff. One case which I'm very excited on now is one of the Darden alums who was I think he was a managing director in Goldman. He left Goldman to find a crypto company, and the Darden faculty will helping him design auctions for selling non-fungible tokens. And based on this case, based on this experience, we also wrote a case about this design of auctions for NFTs. And this is going to be now included in the game theory elective for the first time as well, where we are going to simulate in class different auction formats. And the students are going to be market participants trying to make profits out of this trading.
So how do you see this class fitting into the Darden curriculum? You mentioned that this was just things that you're interested in. You put this elective together, and there's a lot of people interested in it. But how do you think it's helpful to a Darden student?
Well, I think, in a very, very broad sense, this kind of game theoretic thinking, where trying to strategize in a way to outsmart your competitors, that is useful in a wide variety of environments, from actual games to, let's say, prize competitions in industry. But maybe two applications which students are most likely to encounter in their real lives are auctions, and, for example, participating in tenders, and also negotiations. Those are two which pop up in vast majority of careers in some form.
All right, I want to talk about game theory a little bit more. Are there any hot topics in game theory that you're following that caught your attention?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that happened for a long time is that while math could deal with these stylized games like Prisoner's Dilemma, the games which are truly of interest to people, such as chess or poker or how financial markets work, those were kind of out of reach. Those were too hard of a mathematical problems for us to be able to solve. One recent development, and this is in the last few years, there has been emergence of game theoretic AI, which is able to solve those games. And now for virtually everything which we can formulate as a game, as something with very concrete rules and strategies and outcomes, we can make a tailor-made AI for that game, which is able to exhibit superhuman performance. And unlike LLMs, now LLMs are on top of everyone's mind. This is a very different beast. It's a very different beast in the way how it works. Like, the programming approach is totally different. And also, in terms of output that you get, like LLMs are like, you can talk to them and they can do pretty much any task, but at many tasks, they're not as good as humans. Like this game theoretic AI, it can only do one task. Like, it can only play a certain form of poker. And if you wanted to teach it to play a different form of poker, you kind of need to do it from scratch, because it's not even able to translate poker knowledge from one domain to another. But in the domain on which it is trained, it's massively superhuman. Like, the gap between a beginner and the best player in the world is smaller than the gap between the best player in the world and the current AI. So like, if you get Magnus Carlsen to play chess versus an AI 100 times, pretty certainly it's going to be 100-0 for the AI. Like, it's not even worth trying.
So what's the business application of this? Obviously, there must be something beyond chess and poker.
Yeah. So and this is one of the things we are now currently doing in my elective is we were trying to get students to brainstorm about potential business applications. And it turns out that this ability to formalize some situation as a game, this is horribly restrictive, and it seems it's very hard to find applications. Two things where there seem to be applications is some of the people who were on the forefront of this game theoretic AI got very large DARPA grants for military applications. And however, that's kind of secretive. Like the public doesn't really know what they're doing, but there seems to be belief that it's applicable there. We can only do some guesswork. The other thing is quantitative hedge funds are hiring a lot of people with this background. So it seems like financial markets are one of those things which can be formalized well as a game, and that there are potentials for profits there.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'll talk about things I did not know before this conversation. Certainly very interesting to hear about the potential applications. So not surprising to hear about the financial markets. I feel like there's been a lot of this increasingly quantitative trading, and now you have AI involved. It makes sense given the evolution of things. So Sasha, we've gotten a few questions in the chat about just your experience teaching here at Darden. And I want to answer a couple of these and then talk a little bit more about your research. So talk about your engagement with students outside the classroom. We talked a lot about discussions and what's happening in the classroom, but what about outside the classroom? What does that look like?
Well, one of the things that Darden and even UVA as a whole has, we have this, we value student-faculty interaction outside of the classroom. And there are many things in place to incentivize this. One of the things we have is like this 9:30 first coffee every day, where there's free coffee for everyone in the lounge. And this is also a place where faculty students come, and then they interact in an informal environment. We even have this budget where every faculty member gets a specific budget for out-of-class interactions with students. And we can use this to take students for lunches, organize events for students. And so that there's a lot of stuff like that as well. And I think it kind of happened organically, I think, for me, but I have a number of my students who I stay in touch with like years after the program, and typically because we like clicked or found some common interests.
So this next question is a little bit more of a sort of applied question. So question here about how to make sense of some of these models, perhaps some challenge communicating to people who don't have a data science background, who don't have a computer science background. Obviously, communication is very much at the fore in the case method, being able to explain your ideas. But any thoughts for people who are struggling with this particular?
This is a very big contemporary issue, which I don't think I have a resolution to. And particularly, many of the modern methods, such as LLMs or even stuff like boosted gradient, decision forests, stuff like that, which are used in machine learning, they are uninterpretable. So they're what we call black box model. Data comes in, recommendation comes out. How, why, we don't know. And this has been, even the experts don't know. This has been a major barrier for adoption of this kind of stuff, because people are very hesitant to delegate decisions to some monstrosity which they don't understand how it works. And it has been a particular obstacle in medical decision making, where now people, and it has given rise to this field of interpretable machine learning, where you have models which are maybe not as good as prediction, but we can understand what's going on. And if people understand what's doing, then they're a lot more likely to sign off of, okay, this is a sensible process.
Yeah, I can see that being a challenge. I want to come back to, we were talking about game theoretic AI, and AI just generally. Obviously, people talk so much about the risk of AI, and I can remember when it was first, like ChatGPT was rolling out. That people kept saying non-negligible chance is going to blow up the world or whatever. And so, what's the risk with game theoretic AI? Like, are there things that people should be thinking about?
Some of this stuff might end up blowing the world, but Well, my belief, it's like if we really get some superhuman AI, then it's likely to be amalgamation of these different approaches. I don't think if you take ChatGPT and just add more nodes, you're not going to get Skynet. But you may get it if you combine these different approaches. And I was recently at AI conference, and they surveyed like, what's the probability? What do people think is the chance that in the next 50 years, development of AI results in human extinction? And I think the average estimate was around 10%. But I mean, like 10% is too much. We should be very careful with this stuff. But my hope is like, so this is definitely a dangerous technology. But my hope is that, we have other dangerous technology, such as nuclear weapons, genetic engineering, that kind of stuff. And we kind of manage to control ourselves and not kill each other with these technologies. So hopefully we can do the same with AI.
Yeah, it feels relatively early in the journey. I'm sure, obviously a lot of conversations about how do you put a framework in place that
Yeah,
still
yeah.
promotes innovation, but also
Yeah,
regulates
but
some of the
yeah,
behavior.
I'm firmly of the belief that this stuff is dangerous, and we should be careful what we do with it.
I want to talk a little bit more about some of your other research interests. So, you spent some time looking at drug supply chain, malaria drug supply chain
Yeah,
in Africa and counterfeiters. So, tell us more about this work and how you got interested in it.
yeah. Like it's a combination of two things. So I was when I was a kid, I was kind of a sickly kid, so I spent a lot of time in hospitals, and then one thing which like at that time I found like befuzzling, like I just couldn't wrap my mind around it, is that I saw many bad medical outcomes, not because we lacked the means to treat people, just because stuff was badly organized. And I was like, how can it be like this? That this is, and now later in my career, I actually had the ability to contribute to stuff like that. And although at this point, I'm no longer surprised that bad outcomes happen because stuff is badly organized. But this made me really motivated to work on like management in healthcare management problems. And if you look at my research topics, like you can find a lot of stuff which seems very all over the place. But the actual connective tissue is that I became a methodological expert on some stuff like this dynamic games. And I have a lot of collaboration with people who have needs of this methodological expertise. So I work with other people who are domain experts, and I'm kind of the methodology expert. And this malaria paper, which you bring up, it fits firmly in that box. So one of my co-authors on that work, Michael Freeman, he is a healthcare specialist, and all of his work is healthcare. And there we are dealing with this issue of counterfeiters. So what happens is malaria is a disease for which we have very good medicine available. Like these azithromycin combination therapies, they're really good, and they're even relatively inexpensive. Sorry, and as a result of this, in US, we have managed to entirely eradicate malaria. Like there's zero malaria in US nowadays. But many tropical countries, they are also developing markets where there's a lot of moderate to extreme poverty. And those drugs are not very accessible to people. And there has even been a lot of donor activity in those markets where states and humanitarian organizations are putting in a lot of money to help get this medicine mm, to people in those markets. So one thing in particular that I'm working on is a recent problem where in some countries, as much as like even more than half of the medicine on the market is counterfeit. And counterfeiters have infiltrated this supply chain. And oftentimes the counterfeiters are even able to get subsidies from the donors. So the donors end up subsidizing the counterfeiters. And it's really bad. And WHO report called this crime against humanity because, we have the means to treat people, save lives, and it's millions of lives, but then someone is peddling fake medicine and profiting off it. But it's kind of murky because also one of the other things which is going on is you have these companies which are generic producers, which don't own the patent. And some of the things they will do is they will illegally produce the medicine and distribute it via black channels. But it's real medicine. So like it has the real active compound. They know how to make this stuff. And this is not so bad. But you also have people producing placebo pills and packaging them to look as real pills and selling that. And that is really bad.
Wow. Okay. Well, are there any takeaways from it? Anything? How do you solve for this problem?
Yeah, it's complicated. And from the donor standpoint, well, one of our good insights was, well, you kind of just keep doing what you're doing. And in most cases, subsidies are effective at not only improving access to medicine, but also at reducing the fraction of counterfeiters in the market. Now our insights do say that maybe like purchase subsidies are better than retail subsidies. So basically, the best thing to do for most cases, it's not universal, seems to be to subsidize the pharmacist's purchase from approved drug retailers, combined with control of pricing. So don't let the retailers price this too high. So these subsidies need to be contingent on them not having pricing power. This kind of seems to be the way to go.
Yeah, that affects the spread, so therefore there's less incentive for a counterfeiter. Is that the logic? Is that how?
Yeah. So this is one of the ideas. Like if the retailers can get real drugs for cheap, it kind of reduces their incentive to source counterfeiters. Like it does provide some of these adverse incentives because like you kind of want to price at whatever the consumer is willing to pay, even if you can acquire the drugs really cheap. This is why it's important that this be paired with price controls.
All right, we got that. It's always interesting what people get interested in as we're going through these sessions. So we actually got a lot of questions about pursuing a PhD in the Q&A. I think people are attracted to that part of your story. Obviously, you pursued an MBA and then a PhD. What did you think about that sequence? And any advice for people who are considering a PhD?
Yes, so it's kind of, I think it's not the advised sequence because then, nevertheless, we have, I think, like a good chunk of the faculty also has an MBA. Because they first got an MBA and then they changed their minds and decided to want to go into academia. I think being an academic requires a certain particular kind of crazy for this to be good for you. It's a huge commitment. Like a PhD program is a 5-year program, and now more commonly, like it even turns out to be a 6-year program. The faculty market is incredibly competitive, and like it's way harder than an MBA program. And you really need to like research. It really needs to be something that you enjoy doing for you to pursue path like this. And while business professors are actually paid quite handsomely compared to most other fields. It's still not as lucrative as if you were a banker or a consultant. So if you're trying to maximize your personal earnings, this is also not the way to go. So you kind of really need to like it. You need to intrinsically be something that you like doing. And every year we get like 20 MBAs who have the idea that maybe they want to do a PhD. And then out of this 20, I think like 18 or so, the faculty managed to convince them this is not a good idea. But then like two end up taking the plunge.
Yeah, how does somebody figure out? You mentioned you got to really know that this is what you want to do. How do you figure that out? Talk to faculty members.
Yeah,
I mean,
talking is great, and I think one of the smart things that some of our students did was try dipping your toes into the water. And like for example, one of our MBA students, after his MBA, he stayed to work as a research assistant for one of our professors here, and then that kind of enabled him to make the decision. Like, is this something that I would really like to do or no? And it also made his profile a lot more competitive when he decided to apply for a PhD. And this person, he decided that he does like it, and he went to Cambridge to pursue a PhD where he's now. Yeah.
all right. So talk to people, maybe do a little bit of research, try to immerse yourself to the extent that you can, and what it will actually look like. That's good advice.
And I know when I was applying for a PhD, like my future advisor asked me, like, well, why do you think you like research? Because you've never done it. And I was like, oh no, this is a really good question. Like, I'm not sure. Yeah.
Well, a couple more questions, Sasha, for you as we wrap up. We got a few more minutes here. So, question from the Q&A. We talked about case method. We talked about obviously Socratic discussions. Talked about your elective, but more of a holistic question. You've been at Darden for a while now. In your opinion, what makes Darden unique?
What makes Darden unique? Well, it's a combination of things, really. It's not just one thing. Like, I think it's this. One is this heavy emphasis on the case method and Socratic learning. This is most schools don't pursue aren't like that, but we are not unique. Like Harvard is also like that. Harvard are big champions of case method. They also have interactive learning. Another thing is a big emphasis on interdisciplinarity, and that everything needs to connect. Our courses, oftentimes you have faculty from different fields coming to a course and which is not in their field, like classes getting taught jointly. It's also in terms of faculty interaction. Like we don't have departments, we have areas. And all of the faculty are like mixed with each other. They're not physically separated. You'd be surprised how much impact that makes, because people in some other places, they can be physically siloed in the separate building, and then they never interact with anyone outside of their environment. And it leads to kind of a groupthink. Whereas here, it's very interdisciplinary. It's also this emphasis on out-of-classroom student-faculty interaction. And I think we have a big emphasis on community, where our community is really nice. And I think kind of that the fact that the school is in Charlottesville, which is in the middle of nowhere, really helps this, because we're kind of, stuck with each other, and we better make the best of it.
Yeah, good point about the scale. Darden is a smaller business school by a business school standard. It's about 335, 350 incoming full-time MBA students each year. Part-time MBA class typically will have about 65 to 70 students. Executive MBA class will have about 120 students per matriculated class. Of course, the executive MBA and part-time MBA are up in Roslyn, but the culture, the sense of community, all those things are still present up there. It's a big part of the emphasis here at Darden and the experience. So I appreciated those points. So Sasha, people may have gotten interested in some of the things that we talked about here today. Are there any books that you recommend for people whose interests have been piqued?
Oh man, so yeah, I have a lot of books. So some of the books which I really like, let me reach for my shelf here. So particularly about this psychology stuff of decision making, stuff like we teach in DA1. This book, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, this is by Daniel Kahneman. He was a Nobel Prize winner in economics, but he's a psychologist by training. And this book is very well written. So it's a fun book to read, but the things it talks about are Nobel Prize winning work where like it's really like that. It's not made up stuff. Very similar this book. Taylor is also a Nobel Prize winner in behavioral economy. Nudge is a really good book. And I'm going to throw a different one out there, and that is this one. One Man's View of the World. So I lived 5 years in Singapore, and this is Lee Kuan Yew, the celebrated leader of Singapore, who brought Singapore from being like a third world country to having higher per capita GDP than US. And they have a very different system than we have here. And it's an interesting take. This is the last book he wrote before his death. And it's about the world and where the world is going. And it's a very un-American perspective, which I found very interesting.
All right, Sasha. Well, we asked the same last question of all of our faculty guests here. And thank you for all your time today, for answering all these questions. We well over the 25, 30 question mark at this point. But I want to ask if there's any advice you would share. We've got a number of people who are on this call who are planning to start in just a few days here. With start of school coming up on August 12. We also have people who are looking forward to perhaps starting next August. Any advice for people as they go forward on their MBA journeys?
Well, enjoy the ride. I think that's the main one. Like for those who are coming here, like if you want to talk more about this stuff, I run an open door policy. So just feel free to barge into my office anytime and chat.
Sasha, thank you so much for your time. I know it's a busy time of year with the start of school, and so appreciate you taking some time out to share your perspective and talk a little bit about your research interests. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
And that was my conversation with Sasha Zorc, a faculty member in the Data Analytics and Decision Sciences area here at the Darden School of Business. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at Darden, that's DARDEN, @virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.